Had people go, we've met with venues and we're like, week before the event, like it was sold out. They're like, what do you mean by sold? I'm like, we are sold out.
Sold the tickets.
Like the amount of tickets that you told us we had, like there's no more.
Yeah.
Are you sure everybody's gonna come? Like, yes. So it's been a constant push. I remember a line in the poem was like, you know nothing of passion until you've seen a deaf girl dance. And I was like, damn. I was like, yo, that's, it's about the money, but it's not about the money. You're gonna get it, and it's, if you stay consistent, it's like anything else. If you stay consistent, you're gonna get the opportunities that will pay, and that you'll start to see real value. But you shouldn't be afraid to just show up.
Welcome to the I Feel You podcast. I am your host, Eddie Wise, and on this episode, we speak to Rashan Brown. Rashan Brown, aka Rush, is a spoken word poet and the founder of Poetry Me Please. Founded in 2019, Poetry Me Please is a spoken word poetry platform and content studio that provides a stage to artists across the world to showcase their talents through creative verbal expression. On this episode, we speak on his recent performance for the Cleveland Browns NFL team. We also talk about the best ways for young poets to break into the industry, and we also talk about his recent sold-out showcase, poetry showcase, at the Apollo. Thank you so much for watching. If you're on YouTube, please don't forget to like and subscribe if you appreciate the content, if you enjoy the content. And if you're on any kind of streaming platforms, thank you for listening. Thank you for giving us your time. Please rate the podcast and also follow us on any social medias that you do see. We appreciate all of the support. And we also appreciate you guys for watching Season 5. This is the finale of Season 5, and we're so excited to move into the next phase of I Feel You, the vodcast. I really do appreciate everybody watching. And without further ado, enjoy the episode. Rush.
Yo.
What's going on, man?
Not much.
Yeah,
not much now.
I was just saying, just popping a squat. How are you feeling today, man?
Feeling good.
Yeah.
Feeling good. Feeling cold, obviously, but I feel like 2024 is going to heat up.
Yeah. Nice.
2024 is going to heat up for sure.
For sure. That's awesome. I mean, you've had a big year already. A lot has happened since you, just in general for the past year, and especially with your brand Poetry Me Please, or your platform, your wonderful platform for poets alike. And first question that I have for you, for those who don't know, well, you know already because of the cold open, but Rush is a poet, and a lot more than just that, but you are a poet at heart. If you had to pick your favorite, most inspiring living poet currently.
Joshua Bennett, for sure. Yeah, it's funny. I don't study poetry too detailed.
Yeah.
I would say high school. The more I watch, the more I would like naturally take. And you feel inspired by it. You really like somebody's cadence. You really like the stuff that they're talking about, and you almost mirror your stuff. And I think when I first started, because I was never took like a professional writing or
like
poetry creative class, so I would just do what I thought was nice. And then I remember I wrote a poem, and I showed it to my friends, and they're like, "Yo, this sounds like the other video you just showed me." I was like, damn, I didn't even realize that. But yeah, Joshua Bennett for sure. He had one piece, huge shout out to him. He had one piece that he performed at the White House when Obama was in office. I can't remember the name of the poem. It was a poem to his sister. And he was, he did sign language in the poem, but it was just so invigorating to like see that. I was like, oh, like this is nice.
That's the one where he was talking about the fact that he didn't learn.
He didn't learn sign. Yeah, so it's like, I
remember
a line in the poem was like, you know nothing of passion until you've seen a deaf girl dance. And I was like, damn. I was like, yo, that's, I'm 11th, 12th grade maybe, and I'm just like, yo. So, as I've gotten older, I would always go back to that video and just how he was able to turn up and turn, his whole, so yeah, definitely.
Beautiful.
Definitely him, yeah, for
That's
sure.
Awesome. When creatives first get into things or creative fields, oftentimes there's that spark of that person or that show or movie or song that gets
That'll
them,
be that
and oftentimes you emulate what got you into it the first time. So it's, that's kind of what that's what you hope as a creative. I'm sure Joshua Bennett's like, if, that's probably really cool for
Yeah,
someone like that.
yeah, hopefully, yeah, because that got me started. Yeah,
Yeah, and I'm sure you've
a little
gotten a
bit.
few people started yourself, so
Yeah.
I'm sure that's pretty cool. When it comes to poetry, you began, and you said that you began because, it was a way to express your, mental health and self-expression. It was
Yeah.
for self-expression in general. Does writing poetry, does it come easy to you, or?
That's a good question. I would say writing comes easy.
Yeah.
Because you can write. I guess the cool thing about poetry is, as a creator and as a poet, once you self-identify as a poet, anything that you write is poetry.
Yeah.
The cool thing, it's like a little cheat code. It's kind of like I can write something, and especially spoken word poetry, if I perform it, if I just stop a little bit, move my voice up and down, and then I stop, and it's like, ooh.
Power pauses.
Yes. So writing is easy. I think poetry with substance and poetry that can make someone feel something inside is difficult to write. Majority of the times that I find, I only really write poetry when I'm inspired. So in those moments, in those pockets, I feel really good and it feels like it's coming easy, but because I'm inspired. But if I was to just write, I don't think it would be as captivating in those moments.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I did a little bit of poetry, because I feel like if you're into hip hop at all, or you want to write music, oftentimes you're just writing poetry to start off. Like, that's kind of how I got into it when I was first doing it.
Dope.
And I just remember, you said you just write and it can be poetry. The way you write is it doesn't, oftentimes people confuse it with rhyme schemes with poetry, and that's just they're not the same thing. And I remember writing in my notes, and then eventually it was just like, it comes off the top things that you're feeling.
Yeah.
And then eventually, as you go on, you see the markers, you see the stanzas,
Yeah,
you see
how it kind of grows in itself.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure I love that feeling.
Okay.
Because of the fact that I feel like poetry can be so fluid.
Right, that's true.
And in your writing, do you have any reoccurring themes, things that keep coming up for you?
Yeah, I speak a lot about God, my religion. Growing up, went to Catholic school all my life outside of college. So, from K through 12, a lot of my references will be about faith, religion, and very subtle too. I'll say something like, handpicked by Mary herself, or like God, just like little hints of it, and anything revolving around my identity. So being Black, being a man, growing up in my neighborhood, those identity pieces always show up in my pieces. I think I've been super successful even tying it back from, writing about things that I've been through. Trials, tribulations, successes, failures, positives, negatives, pros, cons, like using myself as the pillar and saying like, okay, what is happening around me? And writing about that, and then as a way to express. So it all ties into, so like those themes will constantly show up in any piece that I write.
Nice. Are you still practicing religion, like Catholic?
Yeah, I mean, I am. So I identify as a Christian, but I went to Catholic school. So, traditional in some rites of like, there were brothers in my high school, and we would have mass, and we'd do the Our Father every day. So like I don't do that, and I haven't been to church in a while, but I still will communicate with God, and natural like the things that I believe in, identify God fearing. So it's still woven into my life.
Yeah, I grew up Pentecostal Christian.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I'm not currently. I wouldn't say that I'm Christian now.
Okay.
But my parents were pastors my whole life. Like I'm.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So it's embedded. It's embedded.
So I mean, I love religion and that faith practice. It's a beautiful thing, and I think it's really beneficial. And I think a lot of the core values that are in religion are kind of missing nowadays. I think we kind of dumped the whole thing out when we decided to like ditch religion.
Yeah,
threw the baby out.
That's a gem. Yeah, that's a gem right there.
So I appreciate you being open about it, because not many people are, and a lot of the practices at home, so it doesn't, I haven't gone to.
It's just kind of like what you have, and it's more about necessarily you have to be in a church to believe, but it's how you live your life, the things that you believe in, the energy that you put out into this world, knowing that, you know, it's just a higher power in general. So I think a lot of the times people won't necessarily talk about it, but in the way in which they live their lives, you'll start to see it come out.
Yeah. Do you feel like it inspires your poetry a lot, like more so than other things, or is it kind of like one of those small things that comes in?
I wouldn't say it inspires. That's not at the top of the inspiration. But it is, again, like, it's easy for me to put God in a poem. Like, God is it's almost effortless. Like, I probably, when I like can't think of nothing, I'm like, oh, I can talk about God. So like, you know, I might drop a line in there, like, you know, so yeah. So yeah.
That's beautiful. I like that. When it comes to poetry, it's not, if you need to check
my bad.
Okay. You're good. It's not the most talked about industry or the most, like, you know, sought after profession, right? Especially when you're thinking about creatives. There are a lot of other creative professions that are a little more glamorous and kind of, you know, mainstream in terms of just what people are drawn to. It seems like with your, you know, with the work that you've been doing on your platform, that you've been kind of slowly shifting that a little bit as well. You've been a part of that cultural shift.
I would love to, you know, most times it's, you know, practicing humility and like remaining humble and trying and doing and all the things. But that's something that I probably should step more into. And I think I do it naturally where I'm putting on shows consistently. I'm putting out content. I'm giving content. You know, I'm kind of changing the narrative, especially in my community. And I've seen that travel and take its course throughout different communities. So yeah, you know, that's such a loaded topic to discuss, and it's an interesting one. You know, I think that there's so many ways to make money and to make impact. A lot of the times, creatives, what I've seen is that you'll have some really talented people who, you know, are like, their cadence is elite. You know, their level of memorization, their stage performance, all of these things like top tier. But when it comes to like the business side or you know, the management side, you know, being able to have that upkeep and using technology in a way that it can enhance what you're doing, I think that gets lost. Whereas, you know, people will say, you know, the greatest lyricists will become rappers instead of becoming poets or just staying a poet. A lot of the rappers that we know now, they've had some form of poetry stage. And because the money went dry, it's like, oh, well, I could just become a rapper. So there's ways, you know, if you think about it, it's, what I say to people is, in any formal event, a banquet, a dinner, you know, anytime you give awards out, there should be a poet opening up or either in the intermission or closing out the show. Those are three big points where you can insert a poet. And then people say, like, why? And then the question is like, why not? Like, why wouldn't you want someone to inspire someone? You know, like, you can have a poet hit the stage and people feel chills. You don't need to, you know, have music and have someone on stage rhyming. You know, like that's the big difference. It's, you know, when you look at, you know, the acoustics of what the area or what the venue needs for a rapper to be successful on stage, you know, sometimes people don't want a rapper on stage. They want someone that can just inspire people. So give a poet a mic with a mic stand, give them 5 minutes, and you can insert that in any event. So that's something that I've been trying to put out there. And, you know, with Poetry Me Please, it's like, hey, every month I'm going to give you 10 poets that can be great at any, you know, at an event, a wedding. You know, you might want a special, you know, you might want a special project done. You might need a narrator, a voiceover, someone to write something. That's a poet. You don't have to go to, think about like a famous actor and, you know, they want somebody to voice over. It's like the poet can write whatever you want to say, and they can also perform it. So those are a few things that I've been trying to put out there and let people know, like, with the projects that I do, I'm showing you, hey, this is what it looks like to have a poet voice over a party recap. And it's like, oh, wow, it's something so simple. But like, those are the things that I kind of like ground myself in.
That's amazing. There's an industry that's so untapped when it comes to that. It's like, with all the events that do happen,
Mm-hmm.
the countless events that happen, like you said, it's a person and a mic.
Yeah.
It's like the most arguably the most effective way to get
Yep.
directly into the audience's head when
Yeah.
it comes to if you're trying to make an impact.
Mm-hmm.
Like we oftentimes try to involve spoken word poetry at our events as well. So we've had a
Nice.
few where we had a lineup of artists. One spoken word artist that's been with us since the beginning, his name is Keon,
Okay.
and he's an incredible spoken word artist. He's doing visual art now, but
Nice.
he would get up there and with his voice and power, like it would set the night off so perfectly.
Nice. That's what's
Shout
up.
out to Gene too, who was at one of our events, and it's so, I don't want to say simple, but it's eloquent and it's
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's just impactful.
It's it's a new style of creativity, and by new, there's always been poetry,
For sure.
and there's always been poets done. But what I've seen, especially with spoken word poetry, is the amount of passion that someone can have on stage.
Yeah.
Because there's all types of poets, but if you find the right poet, and that's the beauty, and this is another thing is, poetry is so different across every poet that I might not be the best fit for a poet for this type of event. But what I'm really good at is most of my poetry is about identity.
Yeah.
And you see it a lot with like Black History Month in February. So you get every organization, you get every corporation, they want to like have something about Black History Month. Again, it's kind of like taking advantage of the opportunity. So I'm not downplaying it. I'm not like, any.
No, and it's, it's a month to celebrate,
And it's like, yo, we want to do something really cool and we want to bring our communities together. And it's like, I have 10 pieces about being Black and what that means and the power, empowerment. And so it's like, yo, I'm the perfect fit for that.
Yeah.
But if there's a, discussion about like, we talked about, the community of cannabis and THC, like I don't indulge. So would I be the best fit to be up on stage? So probably not, but like there's somebody who out there who has pieces that will describe how they feel when they indulge in those. And it's like, yo, like that's probably what you want. So we're, being Black and indulging in, cannabis is like completely kind of different themes there, but it's like, there are events where you can make it happen. So, and even touching back on that first bit, it's creating those opportunities, but also teaching poets on how to do it as well. And that piece is something that's ongoing. So again, what I've been trying to do is doing the actual projects, getting booked, being able to reach out to certain companies or, looking at, and I'm trying to document, here's what it looks like when, I did I performed at the season opener for the Cleveland Browns.
Yes, we're gonna
hit that. So, and that was something I don't want to give too much. We will hit it when we hit it, but it's like documenting that whole process and having conversations on social media where it's not something too formal, but I'm showing people like, yo, this is what was presented to me. This is what I wrote about. Here's how I made those connections, and then showing them like, yo, I'm a poet, and it makes perfect sense that you have a poet, to honor Jim Brown and that, right? And just like making funny connections, like my last name is Brown.
Yeah.
His name is Jim Brown. He played for the Cleveland Browns. So like, there's a few jokes that I've made along, but it's just, finding ways to make content, to make things relevant, and then showing poets like, oh, this is what happens when you put your stuff out there. People can see it and go, oh, he'll be perfect for this idea that I have.
Yeah.
So.
And I'm glad you're in this position because you can definitely tell you have the mind of a curator, and where it's not just like, somebody comes up to you and is like, oh, I have this event that it's like, give me a spoken word. They're like, no, what's the event for?
Yeah,
who's the audience? What's going to happen at this event? How can you best suit this talent for this event to make it the best possible? To let it have the most impact. And as you get more effective in that realm, you start to see more of those opportunities pop up.
Yeah.
And especially for the people on your platform, I'm sure. Question, because obviously you have been doing this for a while and you have a great mind for this. If a poet it's like somebody younger is trying to get into this realm, somebody just just budding, trying to figure out like where do I go first? What would be the cliche question, but what would be the number one piece of advice that you would give to this person?
That's a toughie. In today's day and age, utilizing social media and technology is where you want to be. You have to put your work out there.
Yeah.
And there's different ways to do it. You can create videos. You can just write and like upload your art into the web. And, there's all ways to protect your art and, protect your, copyright, trademark, all these things. But like in the simplest form is to put the work out there and to make it look good. And there's different ways of doing that. Being authentic when you put out content, and embedding in yourself. I know I'm kind of jumping in, but like,
no, you're good.
There are people out there who can really curate a video and they'll make it really look nice. And it's kind of like natural for them, even like with TikTok. Like you don't have to be a video editor or a video designer to really know how to make a transition look good. Like nowadays you can put it on an app and like press a you can sit down and kind of just do it yourself. Yeah. But it's okay if you can't, because there's somebody out there who can. And if you give it to them and you say like, hey, like I want this to look like this, it's going to cost you some. There's plenty of, of apps and websites that you can utilize. So just like reaching out to your community, but like betting on yourself, because when you put the video out, if it looks really good, half the times, unfortunately, people care more about the quality versus the content.
Yeah.
Or the thing is, like, you need the quality for people to even watch long enough to receive the content. So it kind of goes hand in hand. And I think as people are like, I don't really know, they're like, I'm not too sure. My piece is to memorize your poem and perform it and record it.
Yeah.
Those three things in the simplest form. Memorize it, perform it, and record it. I think when people don't memorize it, nothing wrong with it. You can read from your book, you read from whatever, but there's a distinction between the level of passion that you can perform with when you have something memorized. And typically people, appreciate that live performance of it. So
you can do a book reading, right? You can do
it, right?
But spoken word is different than just reading your book. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. And that's how I feel. And, and it's, you can, even to just go back on that, like you can perform spoken word reading from your book.
Yeah.
But
there's a place for...
There's that level of passion that some people are looking for. I think there are poetry lovers out there. Well, what's interesting and what I found is that with my crowd, it's their first, introduction to poetry. They don't really know what poetry is. Yeah. So when they're watching it, they're like, a lot of people can go, oh, I didn't really get it, or like I didn't really feel it. But if you have somebody that's passionate, that can stop on a dime, that can start it from the top and like allow the crowd to jump into the pieces, which is typically how Poetry Me Please is run. Someone can leave that like, yo, that was a whole experience and I really enjoyed the experience and I want to learn more. Yeah. And it gives them an opportunity to actually listen to your content and to go back and watch the videos and then say like, oh, I was there when they performed this, and like really get in tune. So it goes hand in hand as well.
Beautiful. That's incredible. Speaking a bit about your, I want to mention the Cleveland Browns performance again, so we can talk about that a bit more. How did that come along, that opportunity? Like, where did that come from? And like, what was that experience like?
It was through a referral. One of my friends, her older sister, works for the Cleveland Brown as I forget the title, so if she sees this, apologize. She works with like special events for the team, and she's done this for a few different teams. But, as a season opener, wanting to honor Jim Brown and reached out to the family and like was working to curate something with the producers of like what they wanted. And she wanted to do spoken word. Yeah. She was like, I want to have a spoken word piece with like an orchestra and, to have other people. They had a painter, shout out to David. So she had a vision of what it would look like on the field and was like, I need a spoken word poet. Wow. And she reached out to her younger sister, and her younger sister is in the community, is a good friend of mine. And she was like, hey, do you know any poets? And she was like, yeah, I do, actually. Like, I actually do know. And you get that. So it's funny I say it like that is because Now you hear that more. But typically, my friends, they only know one poet, and that's me.
Yeah.
So it's like,
True.
whenever somebody asks, do you know a poet? I actually do. You know, it's like, oh, and they know that because everything is poetry, please, poets. But, and obviously they know that even if I'm not the poet, that I know poets.
Exactly.
In the platform. You can go on our platform, just literally see a bunch of poets. So, made the connection, reached out, and she gave me her idea. And what was even more beautiful, and this is the part that I've been doing more of, is showing them like, this is the process. And it's a cool process. You meet with somebody and they say like, hey, here's the vision. These are the things I want to talk about. I just can't put it into a poem. And that's where, as a poet, that's where I come in.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, we want to talk about, his history, his, the impact that he made, his football career.
Yeah.
And then I do research, and I'm literally looking him up. And, you hear about Jim Brown, about the things that he's done, especially being big on the civil rights. And then you learn even more. And then you figure out, okay, how am I going to put this into a poem?
Yeah.
And, you ask some simple questions of like, how long do I have?
Yeah.
Will there be any music added on? Right. And all of these things will determine the cadence. So now as you're asking these questions, in my mind, I'm like, okay, I might start off slow and then pick it up. Okay, this song really works well. I might include this in, I can talk about his football career because it's more inspiring, and it's, it's probably, it's going to be a big impact. But then when we start talking about some civil rights things, I should probably slow it down and really emphasize the things that he did, the people that he met with, the organizations that he's founded. And then you get, I get to the day of, and I'm looking around, and we was about like 70,000 people there. And I'm like, yo, this is crazy. I'm like, it was a whole experience from start to finish. First time in Cleveland, linking up with a videographer to shoot behind the scene footage. So now I'm like working with the community and like just tapping in. So that whole experience in itself was great. It taught me a lot. And it happened within like 2 weeks. So the time frame in itself, right? So there's so many moving parts. And then, you get on stage, and then right before I met the family, and it's almost like, someone is trusting you to create art that you feel can be a good representation to honor someone that they love,
Someone very important.
they love truly and dearly. And that's a lot of responsibility. And as a poet, to internalize that, it makes, it just makes everything feel better. So people can think, oh, as a poet, you wrote a piece. It's like, I researched and I figured out what was the best way to communicate this. Yeah. And that was a special project. Yeah. It was something, the things that I spoke about were not things that I've done or that I necessarily connected with to a certain point. Yeah. Right. I've never played professional football, played in high school, but it's different. Like I learned about civil rights, and I live it because I am Black, but I wasn't with him. Right. So all of those experiences coming in, like that's the beauty of being able to say like, I'm a poet. I'm much more than just someone who writes, someone who performs. I'm more so in the culture of poetry. For sure.
And speaking on the time frame as well, that's typically my advice for people doing anything creative is that, and this goes for any field, is being so ready for that opportunity where you can just do that, right? Because most people will go their entire careers not really being ready because they're waiting for something to make them ready or to take them to that position of being ready, right? But if you're diligently working on what you have to do every day, making sure that you're at least getting an hour in of whatever practice you're doing, you can show up to that and just be like, I got this.
I got it. Yeah, that's a good point.
And no sweat, and I'm gonna make sure that I do this properly, because sometimes there's a lot of weight to it.
Yeah.
And that's a good point. That's a beautiful thing. Yeah. And it's exciting to hear about it and see it on that larger scale. That's not often seen when it comes to spoken word or poetry in that regard. Of course it happens, but how can people contribute to getting that more often? Because you talked about getting more people aware that events can easily incorporate that. But like, if I'm someone who's a fan of spoken word poetry, how can I contribute to getting that seen more often?
It's reaching out to the people that are culture shifters, the people that are throwing these events, that are hosting. Again, I had mentioned a formal event where people are dressed nice and cocktail hours and
or like a White House with
like
Joshua
a White House,
Bennett.
right? So those events, because it's more of an elegant, classic feel, of course.
For sure.
But even just like a mixer, it can be anything. And what I've done a good job of is, it's about the money, but it's not about the money. You're gonna get it, and it's if you stay consistent, it's like anything else. If you stay consistent, you're gonna get the opportunities that will pay, and that you'll start to see real value. But you shouldn't be afraid to just show up and just say because a lot of the times I'll see the vision, but other people won't, and it's okay. Unfortunately, it's it's kind of like, dang, but you don't see how
we live in different minds.
Yeah, it's don't you see how important it is to have a poetry event? And they're like, not really, and. They're strong and they're like, not really. And then you say something like, well, I'm going to show up anyway. Like, what are you talking about during this event? And they're like, yo, the event, we're trying to honor whatever. And I'm like, all right, cool. I got a poem for you. I just need 5 minutes. Yeah. And you perform, make sure you record it, have somebody to tag along with you to get behind the scene footage and just document it. And then at the end, people will either say, damn, that was good. Or to be like, oh, that was cool. You might get somebody be like, yo, that was trash. But that's a part of the game. It's like everything else. So, but if you believe in your content, you're good at what you do, then, so for people that are interested in poetry that may not be poets, people, if you know someone that's hosting an event, community leaders that are part of organizations or corporations that are also hosting, saying like, hey, I have somebody that I want to recommend to you that they think could be a good fit.
Very effective.
Yeah.
A great example of this. I don't know if this was planned or not, but somebody I mentioned earlier, Keon. Yeah. He had one video go viral over the time with the BLM protests. Okay. It was of course that was a big movement, especially during COVID. Everybody was going outside again to march for the cause, and he had a video go viral where he was, I think it was Times Square, but he was in the middle of it, and he was doing spoken word, and it was a massive crowd of people, and his work was very, very connected to that, because of course he was talking about his experience being black, right? And that video went so viral, and I'm sure it inspired so many people to get involved in something so important. Yeah. And like I said, I'm not sure if it was planned, if the organizers had that in mind, but that's a really great example of how effective spoken word can be, especially in even in like spur of the moment things where he was just standing up in the middle of this crowd on this thing with a few other people and yelling out. He was just yelling, just like and people were like, passionate, let's go, it's that's really incredible, and it's exciting to see. I mean, you have a few examples of how effective it can be. Recently, you had a really big event.
Oh yeah, Apollo.
Massive deal. Apollo was over 1,500 people.
Yeah, over 1,500
sold
people.
Sold
out.
Oh man, how did that feel? I'm sure that was a dream.
That was, man. It was. I am still living it today. Yeah. I'm I'm doing. I always like try to always see how I even do it right now. Yeah, trying is like a word. It's like a filler or a buffer word. Yeah, it is. My cousin is always like, shout out to Shaq. He's always like, yo, stop saying you're trying. Like, you are doing. You're doing. And it's just so easy to fall into, I'm just trying. I'm saying humble. Like, I'm doing the Apollo and selling out the Apollo.
Largest showcase.
Largest showcase. And even to provide some more clarity on that, it gets lost. And I had somebody, really have a meaningful conversation with me about like, there's tons of poetry showcases. Yeah. There's actually been some showcases at the Apollo. But getting granular with what the showcase means. So there's been slams at the Apollo. So with the slams, the competition. Yeah. And the reason why I'm, really critical about saying showcase is because a showcase is something that's curated where the poets aren't performing for money. Yeah. I'm not grabbing the best in the West and the best in the East.
It's grabbing, not like battle rap vibe.
Yeah, it's not that. It's, these are, I did some competitions on social media, post, and me and my team went through it and we felt like, yo, this would be a good fit for what we wanted to do. Yeah. We had a slam competition. The winner of that slam received a slot for the Apollo.
Nice.
So
Wow,
there
that's
were,
awesome.
you know, like there were and
deal.
you know, it's all in the poetry community. So poets that have performed for us, some poets that haven't. So mixing it up and then grabbing poets to throw a showcase where this is something that's curated.
Yeah.
This is something that's authentic. And then having people come out, you know, they're not coming to see, you know, a teen slammer that won X amount of, you know, like it's not what it is. These are just like this showcase could have happened anywhere.
Yeah.
But it happened at the Apollo.
Yeah.
So then now being able to say like the largest pure poetry showcase, or we didn't have a big musical act come in for intermission.
It wasn't like exactly.
You know, we had celebrities in their own right, you know, which I would say, you know, if you think, you know, X amount of followers makes you a celebrity, like, sure, we, you know, they had some, you know, they had their following, sure, 100%. We didn't have, you know, in my opinion, any A-list music, rappers, singers come in. It was poetry from the start to finish.
Yeah.
And that to me is most impressive. And that's what I'm most proud about, is going back, bringing appreciation back to poetry.
Yeah.
You're coming to the Apollo, sitting down for 4 hours for poetry. You're not listening to anybody rap. There's no singers.
There's no dancing.
There's no band. There's no orchestra coming out.
No distractions.
You getting poetry from start to finish, and then being able to say like, this is what poetry at the highest level can look like.
Yeah.
And we can do that consistently because we've built a community that truly wants to be a part of this new movement. And my new movement, Poetry Me Please, a spoken word poetry platform that provides a stage for poets across the world to showcase their talents through creative verbal expression, coming in and going, oh, this is what spoken word looks like in 2023. I like this.
Yeah.
Where has this been? So doing more of that. So it's been, that feeling has been amazing. It was amazing leading up to it. I would say, the planning stages, but amazing on stage. And then now being like, we did it, moving on to the next. So yeah.
Bigger and better. That's a round of applause for that, man.
Thank you.
That's honestly incredible and really exciting, because I find it so inspiring that you were able to get that many people to really listen. I think there's something so special about people just speaking. And this is why I appreciate stand up as well. Because, you know, they really are coming to listen to a person talk about, you know, their lives and their stories and get a really good laugh out of it and be a part of this. And there's no, like you said, there's no dancing, no loud music, no distractions, you know, there's people aren't indulging in things to, you know, feel a type of way. They don't have to do anything but listen. And that's where you get the most value from the experience. And to have that many people come through and do that, congratulations, man.
Thank you.
It's incredible.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It feels, like I said, it feels amazing. And funny enough, I haven't fully I haven't really fully accepted it. You know, people come up to me like, yo, you did the Apollo, how's it feel? I'm like, damn, I did the Apollo. I just forgot about that. And it's like, yo, how could I ever, like, I've been talking about the Apollo and planning and meeting with my team every week for the last X amount of months. And, you know, I know that as the year starts to come to an end and, you know, things start to mellow out with work and everything that's going on, it'll make room to fully accept and let it hit, and then just sit in it and be like, yo, like this was fire. That was something that was monumental. And
I think you'll start to be able to feel that more as opportunities come because of it. I think you'll see things where it's like, yo, I was at that show, or, you know, we saw this show and really loved it, we want to do it again here. You know, these venues reaching out to, you know what I'm saying?
Like,
I think that's when
that's when it'll hit.
You'll be like, I knew that was good.
It's like, yo, God, you ain't believing it before. You see what we did. And there's been moments like that. And, you know, I don't take it personal. Obviously, everybody has a plan, and if it doesn't align at the time, you know, whatever. But there has been so much resistance. And I even, you know, I spoke about this during that night. And, you know, being young, Black, going into these spaces and saying like, hey, I need to book this room that holds 500 plus. And they're like, oh, what do you need it for? I'm like, it's a poetry show. And they're like, you sure? They're like, you know, sure? Like, how many tickets you have? How many tickets you sold? And, you know, even the day of, I've had people go, you know, we've met with venues and we're like, week before the event, like, it was sold out. They're like, what do you mean by sold? I'm like, we are sold
we
out.
sold the tickets.
Like the amount of tickets that you told us we had, like there's no more.
Yeah.
Are you sure everybody's gonna come? Like, yes. You know, so it's been a constant
funny
push.
issues to deal
People are like,
with,
oh, you did
man.
Apollo?
Jeez.
Which theater? Which room did you get that? Like and it's, you know, sometimes it's malicious because it's, you know, people are people. Other times it's
Also,
just
people doubt it, you know.
people doubt it. Others, you know, it's a bit of ignorance too. You'll get like, oh, you did the Apollo? Which room were you in?
Yeah.
The big room. You know, like the theater. Like, oh, like, yeah. So it's a little bit of that, but you know, I think more than anything, it's going to be like way, but it's ain't nothing for us because we're just going to do it and be like, yo, this is like, watch the video. Like that's the room we did it in, you know? So having a bit of that success to, you know, kind of talk it up a little bit.
You talked a lot about recording it, which I really do appreciate. And I want to use that to talk about something that you went to recently. You got invited to, it was called the Thanksgiving Conference in DC, which for those of you who don't know what that is, it's a conference in where the focus is to build more equitable, a more equitable tech future for Black and Brown communities, right? Poetry and tech, you know, I'm sure there's a lot of ways that they can be integrated, but what are some of the ways that you find to be the most important, and in ways that you guys are you know, pioneering?
Yes, that's a solid question. Good connection there. Shout out to IO and the Thanksgiving team. The way that you know, I did the workshop.
Yeah.
And the first time I've done something like that, and I remember him and I speaking the first time, they had a bunch of panels, but then they had an opportunity to do workshops. And I'm like, you know, I used to be a 4-year STEM educator.
Oh, wow.
So so that's
awesome.
where I started. Like I'm in tech now, but I'm like, y'all want to do a workshop? Yeah, I used to do it all the time. And I'm like finding a way to intermix all three of these. And I did a product, poetry, and a tech workshop. And the way that I was able to combine those three is just to take a look at all three of those. And, you know, the first question I asked the crowd that I did, I was like, what is product management? Managing a product. And what is poetry? Creative art, spoken, you know, people give your answers. And what is technology? You know, it's the you know, I guess there's so many ways to define it, but something that can make movement or that can be movement, whether on the digital side or physical side, you know, technology, there's all types of technology. And looking at poetry, looking at product, looking at technology and saying like, how do these come together? So to your question, the way that I did it was, you know, managing poetry as the product, managing it as a product manager and using tech to my advantage. So when you look at Poetry Me Please, that's the product. And there's so many different features that come within this product. It's a digital product, it's a physical product, it's the product. And in technology, using social media, using equipment that we have, like the cameras, making sure that you have poets that are mic'd up, making sure you have the audio coming from the sounds from the system, you know, the system itself. So you get that crisp, clear quality. So when you hear it, people are like, oh, like, yo, this looks really nice. The sound matches it. And then what that does, it increases the time that people spend watching the content. So and then looking at data to say, you know, if you put out 10 videos, where's the peak? When do people stop watching the video? Or why do people stop watching the video? You know, nowadays you see different trends, you know, there's all data to support this, that like short form content has taken over because our attention spans have decreased. So you can have a 3-minute video, but just take the highest or take the most interesting 30 to 90 seconds of that video and post it. And then you want to drive people somewhere. So where you're driving them to, you might have a YouTube, you might have, I know there's tons of other platforms that I'm not thinking about now where you can like home your portfolio of videos and you drive them there. So in that small bit of what I just gave you, like that's a way where you combine all three of those and knowing to look at the data, knowing that you need to utilize short form content, especially in the age ranges between like really now 16 to 34 and taking a step back and saying like, oh, this is how I promote myself. So with Thanksgiving, being able to do that workshop, being able to like take a step back and say, I'm going to combine all of these. and using poetry as a product, but really art was the product.
Yeah.
So there were creatives that were in the room that do hair, that do podcasts, that do all different types. And it's like just replace poetry with any art that you have and utilize everything I just spoke about.
Yeah. And I appreciate that, you had the opportunity to speak on that and that you're continuing to, because one of the, and this is something that for poetry, I'm glad that you're on the forefront of it, because one of the things that led to so much industry abuse and the current strifes of a lot of the industries that are currently being ran by these bigger companies is the accessibility to promotion. So you talked about the tech and the circle that you have to create with all of the tech to create a great product.
Yeah.
That's not stuff that was accessible to people, even the 30 years ago,
right. Yeah.
Or wasn't easily accessible even 10 years ago. Some of these technologies weren't as easily accessible to broader communities, especially more impoverished communities. And being able to be at the forefront of an industry and giving access to younger people or anybody that wants to get in the field without there being a bunch of strings attached or contracts, or we talk about all the time on this show about industries, and specifically the music industry. We talk about Spotify a lot, or any bigger record label that really has so many artists tied up in deals that aren't sustainable, and they've been doing this for so long. But that's because they have the access to the technology that people need to promote themselves. They have that leverage. And being able to go to conferences and talk about how you can have that leverage instead of it being something that you have to like beg somebody for, or do things that are unfavorable to you, to your even down to your morality. You can have access. You don't have to do those things, and you can, like you said, you can record it. You can do it
yourself. A big part of Poetry Me Please is the content piece. So we're big on, we don't pay poets. So we pay them in a way of content. So when we break it down to poets, we say the biggest piece is that it's free of charge. So poets don't pay. But they do receive 2 videos per poem. So the way that I break it down is, we give poets 7 minutes on stage. And at the conclusion of the event, they receive photography content. So about 10 to 15 shots in motion. A lot of these shots are headshots for poets. Or just to build their creative portfolio. And then you get 2 videos per poem. So we do a 2-angle shot. We get the close up and then we get the back, the wide angle. And then we give them one of those and we give them a combination of the 2. So when you are addressing maybe the right side of the crowd, you may be looking at the right side of the camera. Or if you are increasing your voice, you might get a switch. Our editor, shout out to Nick. He's real diligent about making it as creative for the performer. So there's pieces when like I might be pointing to the right, then I point to the left, and the camera will switch with me. So like something as minor as that that can make somebody go, oh, that video was fire, So and it. So for 7 minutes, that's anywhere between 1 to 3 poems. So if you have 3 short poems, you leave with 6 videos. So just taking a step back, and that's only half of what we give out. So that in addition to that, you get features on all of our social sites. So now we're at like close to 50K on Instagram, above 50 on TikTok, the YouTube, Twitter, all these social sites. You'll get recognition for it. You'll get a tag. People are driving to your website or your social media platforms and going like, oh, I found you from Poetry Me Please. How are you able to utilize that? That's a separate conversation. And then the last of it is getting welcomed into a community of poets. So when you reach out to me, say like, hey, I need a poet for this showcase coming up, I send an email out. Or like I'll reach out to somebody and be like, yo, somebody's looking for a poet. They need a woman. Like, I can't do it. Like, it's just for, so those 4 things we ground ourselves in. And when you just take a step back and look at the amount of content that we were able to create, it's hard to book a studio. It's expensive to book a studio. An audio engineer, a videographer. It's hard.
The rentals and the equipment.
It's like, tough. And you need somebody that you trust and that knows what they're doing. And they're not, they're expensive. So another part of it is also, taking a step back and saying like, these are resources that are open and free to you. So when you talk about having access,
Yeah.
it's open to everyone. You know, again, we only choose 10 poets per showcase, and we got tons of poets in our in the backlog. But like, we're still making a dent in what we're doing, and I think that is the biggest piece.
Yeah.
And the long term is when you get an opportunity to perform in front of a crowd, you have a corporation that has the budget to support and to really pay you what you think you need at that time. You can show them footage of like, hey, here's content. This is what it looks like when I perform.
Yeah.
Where are you getting that content from? Yeah. You perform at PMP, you got all the content you need. And then don't stop, not stopping there. What I teach poets too is like, anytime you perform, you need to record it. Even if it's just for your like internal archives, look at how when you said that word, look at your face, look at your body language, study it and improve on it. Yeah. So, these are ways that we try to empower poets without saying like, hey, like I can offer you this amount of money to perform. Sometimes it doesn't really make sense for everyone that's included in that pot.
Yeah, it's an incredible amount of value that you're giving. Being a part of Project Feel and doing client work for people, I can tell the people that are watching, if you don't know what you described, the value that they get out of the performances with just the videos, that's thousands of dollars of content. Right. That is like 6 videos. You're looking at a budget like that. You need studio budget,
right? Like, and they don't even know what that. I think that's probably even something I should even expand on at another point in time. But like the amount of money that it would cost to do, like I did 2 videos. I rented out a studio, had a photographer, had a videographer, and it cost me close to like $2,500. And when I look at, this year we did a slam and I gave that back. So like the slam prize winner was $2,500. And like, that's the connection that I made there. And I'm like, this is how much money it cost me to get started. Yeah. And there was no return when I did that. And what I mean by that is like, I'm putting out content. I'm not doing it because somebody, commissioned me to do it. I'm just doing it because I want to show people that I can do it. Yeah. And look at what has happened since then. So betting on myself and showing people like, it's not you getting 6 videos, man. It ain't cheap.
That's nothing to scoff at, man. That's incredible. I think anybody watching it, I think they understand the value and they should be jumping at that opportunity as long as it exists, because nothing is forever. And I think as long as the door is open, I think getting the most amount of people in as possible. That's what we try to do at Project Feel as well, is doing things similar where we can bring somebody in and we can provide you with some kind of value that's not just monetary, something that can take you further and get you in the right rooms and stuff. So I appreciate you,
for sure.
With we have an aligned vision. So, I'm excited to see what happens in the future. Don't be surprised if you guys see, us collaborating in some kind of way.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely the missions align. You know what I'm saying? You get it.
Yeah, it makes total sense. I hear you. Thank you for being on the show. I really do appreciate you. Yeah. You had so many great things to say, and to the people watching at home, if you're still watching, I know why you're still watching. That the incredible knowledge, all the information that you need, really. If all of the links for all of Rush's stuff is it's all in the description below, so please follow on all the pages you can. If you don't mind, to end off the show, one, give us a few ways that we can support you besides just following, and also, if you don't mind ending us off with some words of wisdom. Yeah, ways to support me. Check out Poetry Me Please and follow all the poets that you see. Jump in their bios. A bunch of them have books out, have albums out, have all types of creative portfolios. There's a way to support them. By supporting them, you're supporting the movement, you're supporting poetry. So please, by all means, do that. And words of wisdom. I always bank on this, just like bet on yourself. Yeah. There is never a bad time to bet on yourself. You should always trust in yourself and to double down in anything that you feel is going to be that next step for you, and to not be afraid to really dive into whatever creative art you have, whatever your next step is, whether it's for your 9-to-5 or your side hustle, whatever it is, just like double down and bet on yourself. Bet on yourself. I love it. Yeah. That's great. Yeah. Thank you, Rush, for being on the show. Appreciate you. Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate you, man. Love. See you guys.